Hi everyone, welcome back to Leo the Lefty. This is my little art piece I'm going to work on today. I did one called Flump in another episode, and this is Flump. I don't know if they're related or not. When I draw, I usually just sit there and watch TV and zone out and draw whatever I draw, and whatever happens, happens. And this is one of the things that happened one time, a flump. So, we're going to talk about the Dyatlov Pass incident today. It's a pretty famous event. Lots of people know of it, lots of people don't. Anyway, before we get into that, let me just talk to you guys a little bit about my second channel, Leo the Lurker. That's where I read Reddit posts like Am I the Asshole, relationship advice, and all the other ones that are really fun and crazy and sometimes angering, really, really maddening. And that's doing pretty well. I've got a few episodes over there, so if you like Reddit stories being read to you with reactions and some yelling and some anger and words that I say whenever I'm appalled or flabbergasted, then check that out. It's Leo the Lurker. I'm also on Reddit, Leo underscore the underscore lurker. You guys can find me over there. I post my videos on YouTube and on Reddit. So you can find me at both places if you like that sort of thing. But just wanted to talk to you guys about that a little bit before we jump into today's case. I'm going to be coloring, reading from my notes, and I drew a little map for this episode. I love drawing maps whenever it's possible and applicable, and so it's not so much a map as it is a diagram of like the area, and I'll show you that to you guys in a little bit whenever it comes up, because I want to show you kind of how things were found and laid out and all that, but we'll get into it first. I'm going to pre-apologize for my pronunciation on some words because this takes place in Russia and I do not speak Russian. And so I'm probably going to butcher those pronunciations. I'm going to try my best, but you know what? Sometimes my best is just absolutely horrible. And to anybody that hears this that actually knows what the words are, I apologize to you in advance, and I mean no disrespect. I'm just kind of a ignorant American doing the best I can. I'm trying to think about what color we want to color this guy first. I think I'm going to use a marker to do the outline, and then I'll use some pastels here to fill him in, but I'm not sure what color I want to make him yet. So, I think I'm going to go ahead and make his little arms and legs. Do I want to color him bright colors, or do I want to color him like, I don't know, like dark brown and green or something, or do I want to do like a blue and purple type situation? I hadn't thought about this before I started shooting, so it's a journey we all get to go on together. You know what? Let's go with brown. I'm going to do a brown outline and maybe color him in like kind of greenish brown and everything. I don't know what effect I'm even going for here. I never know ahead of time. I usually don't even pick my specific art pieces ahead of time unless it's a coloring book page, because some of those stand out to me and they do kind of go along with the cases I'm doing. But on the ones where I draw the art piece, normally it's just I pick something random that I think will last me, that I can complete by the time I'm done telling you the story. It's a very sophisticated form of decision making, and that is sarcasm. All right, so Dyatlov Pass. This is one of those events in history that makes people say, what the actual hell was going on here? And although there are some people that believe there are answers, we will never actually really know. I don't think, anyway. We'll get into theories at the end, but recently, in the last couple years, there was another theory put out that, I don't know, doesn't really jive, but if that's what they're going with, okay, if you say so. Let me finish filling in his little outline here. This is a really interesting story just because of what happened. It's tragic as well, just for the same reason, because of what happened and everything. So, but it really has kind of sparked a debate when people talk about it, about what happened and how it happened and why it happened and all of that sort of thing. So, it's a very interesting event that usually supplies some interesting conversation. How's that looking? So, sometimes weird shit happens and we ultimately figure it out, and sometimes weird shit happens and we never figure it out. And sometimes weird shit happens and some people think we figured it out and others think we haven't. I'm on that boat right now. I don't think we've really figured this out, what actually happened and all that. As I said, there are some people that think they know, and maybe they do. I mean, they could honestly be correct. I don't know. And I wouldn't, argue with them and tell them they're wrong. I would just say, yeah, maybe. Maybe that's what happened, but also maybe not. I don't want to be, that person, but on some certain things I am that person just because I don't wholly believe the final theory. I think I'm going to make his, feet and legs, a green or something like that, so they kind of stand out. Okay, so we're going to start out on the February, 1st and 2nd, 1959, in the Ural Mountains on the eastern slopes of Kholat. I think that's how it's pronounced. Kholat. Kholat. 9 hikers would die under most mysterious circumstances. So I'm going to list off their names. So we've got Yuri Nikolaevich Doroshenko, 21 male. Ludmila Alexandrova Dubanina, 20 female. Another Yuri oh my god, I'm so sorry. Krivonishenko. It's and that's not even the pronunciation for me. It was my horrible handwriting and how I wrote it, because sometimes even I trip myself up. It's the left-handedness. And he was 23 male. I'm going to put my map over here so I don't lose it. Alexander Sergeyevich Kolevatov. See, again, that's my handwriting. 24 male. Zenadia Kolmogrova, 22 female. Rustem Slobodin, 23 male. And Nikolai Thibault, 23 male. Thibault Brignolis. Yes. My lord, I'm so sorry. Yuri Yudin, 21 male. He left the expedition before they actually got to their destination. So he was on the first part of it, the first leg of the journey to the destination, but he got sick along the way and had to drop out. So he wasn't actually up in the mountains when the incident occurred because he was too ill to travel. And so he would be considered the only survivor of the trip. And I think he just died in the past 20 years or so. It's been a while since I wrote this script, but I want to say it was either and I have it written down somewhere. Oh, yeah, 2013. At age 75 is when he passed away. So, he lived much longer after the incident happened. And He really didn't, since he wasn't there, he didn't have any like additional information to give other than everything seemed fine when he left the group. And they would leave him behind in a town before they got on a train to continue on their journey and everything. So he really was nowhere near any of this when it happened. So what I'm getting at is he is not a suspect. All members of the group were grade 2 hikers and would receive their grade 3 certificate upon their return from this trek. Now, throughout my research, I kept seeing it called grade 2 or category 2, so whichever one of those is correct. I don't know anything about hiking. I'm sorry. I live in a flat, dead desert that I have no interest whatsoever in hiking in, and would have to drive quite a few miles to get to actual like nature, because everything here is developed and all that, and I am often working too much to be able to do that. I would love to hike regularly, but haven't been able to so far. Anyway, that's neither here nor there. It doesn't matter. Shut up, Leo. Not about you. So they're on this trek, and from their destination originally, this trip takes them about 3 days to get to where they want to go. And these are all like younger college students, but they have a lot of experience hiking, because I guess grade 2 is pretty, badass, and grade 3 is even more badass. The route would take them to the far northern region of Sverdlovsk Oblast, and the upper streams of Lozva River, and the Sverdlovsk City Route Commission approved their route on January 8th, 1959. So, this is a dangerous trek. They have to get permission and all of that to even do this journey. And they received it, a couple of weeks before they left. Sorry, I want to make sure that I got my little dude on camera here. So the expedition goal was to reach a mountain called a Torton, a mountain 10 kilometers or 6.2 miles from where the incident occurs. And this route was considered a grade 3 route. So by doing this, they were all going to receive grade 3 certification by completing this trek, which would, boost their credentials and advancement as, I guess, professional hikers is the word we would call it. Expert hikers, professionals, experts. I don't know. If you know, you tell me. I would love to know. One of these days, I do plan on moving from the south to the north, and I would like to kind of, like, I live what is considered out in the country right now, but you wouldn't know it. There's been so much development over the last few years out here that it is no longer the country. But when I move, I plan on living somewhere closer to nature where I can actually start generally hiking and everything. I would love to be able to go out and hike in some mountains or something beautiful like that. But here it's just mesquite and oil rigs and someone else's property. So do not want to do that down here. You do not want to be hiking on someone else's property down here. Very dangerous for very American reasons, if you know what I mean. Okay. Just want to get that part up again. So on January 23rd, the group is issued their route book, which is listed their course following the number 5 trail, and they left the city that day. I'm sorry, I'm unprepared for this part because I did draw a little sort of town map where Let's see here. See that? All right, so they're starting down here, and they're working their way up. This is the Dyatlov Pass. So they're going to, this is January 23rd to Serov, the 24th to Ivdel, excuse me, see, I'm horrible. January 25th to Vizhai, and then the 26th through the 27th, they're going to be making it up. And they're trying to get, like, up here, but this is where the incident occurs. So that's why that's important, because they never make it to their final destination, which is kind of off over here. So, I mean, this is where the book stops. So that's why that's important. They arrive at the pass, and we don't exactly know what happened while they're there, but everything seems to be okay for a while. Like, they're in the middle of a blizzard, so they kind of get off course. And what it seems is they were trying to reach a different pass, but the weather kind of picked up, and so they had to make camp where they ended up making their camp at Dyatlov Pass. It wasn't called Dyatlov Pass. It was only started to be called that after this incident, after Yuri Dyatlov. So it actually is given the name of the head of the expedition after this incident occurs. So they're supposed to be out there a couple of days and making contact with their family. And like I said, the last they were seen or heard from by people, they seemed fine. Everything was fine. But they end up not reaching out to their families when they said they would. And it wasn't like a super specific time frame, like Saturday at noon, you should hear from me. It was, you know, between this day and this day, you should hear from us. We don't know exactly how long it'll take, but don't worry if you don't hear from us on the first day, maybe the second or third. If you haven't heard from us by this specific day, then be worried. And so, you know, that time comes where their family is worried. They have not heard from them. So their plan was to get over the pass and make camp on the opposite side, but the weather got worse and the visibility got worse, and so they ended up camping on a slope. Yeah, so it looks like in my notes here, February 12th is when kind of they were supposed to be expecting, their family members were expecting a telegraph from them that they had, you know, completed their hike and everything was well and all good and all that, but their families did not hear from them. And it sounds like from different things that I read that the families reached out to the authorities over this, and at first the authorities were like, oh, you know, I'm sure they're fine. Which is always something the authorities do, and it's almost never fine. We have a really big issue with that here in the United States, especially with missing children and even missing adults, where the cops are like, oh, you know, they probably just ran away and they'll come back, and then, you know, they never do. So, yeah, it's frustrating for families. And I'm sure the families of these hikers were extremely worried and frustrated as well, because it wasn't really being taken that seriously at first. And by the 20th, because this is 8 days after they were supposed to have heard from them, and they hadn't heard from them, finally the families are able to kick up enough dust and demand a search party be sent out. And so finally that happens. The first search party were to go out weren't even the authorities, though. It was volunteer teachers and students. And later, I don't really know exactly how much later. I couldn't find that, but it says that they are joined later by the Army and police with planes and helicopters and searching for the next few days. So it takes them a few days to find anything, you know, because they don't exactly know where I mean, of course, they don't know where they are, which is why they're missing, but they don't really know what area to look at because they don't know how far they made it in their journey before whatever happened. But eventually, on the 26th, the first of the bodies are found. And this is where I'm going to bust out my diagram. Hold on, Flump. All right. Hopefully you guys can see that. So these bodies, the little red marks, are the bodies that are found first. This is their tent. And then, let's see, the first one to be found they're found at the same time, are both Yuris. Both Yuris are found by a tree. There's a tent, and then 1,500 meters away, there's a tree, and then another 75 meters on from that is a stream. And the bodies are found, somewhat distance apart, except for both Yuris are found by this tree. It's very strange. Authorities find what looks like a campfire had been made. And about 4 to 5 meters up the tree, the branches are broken as if somebody had tried to climb it and everything. So these guys are found first, both Yuris. And then they find Igor 300 meters away. And then another 180 meters is Rustem. And then another 150 meters, they find Xena. And so these are all found, and the rest of the crew has not been found yet. And that's important because they're not going to be found for a while, like just these bodies. Because this is winter, there's snow everywhere, everything's buried in snow and all of that. So let's talk about the tent for a second. The tent is found with all their shoes and clothing still inside. The tent appears to have been sliced open from the inside. It appears that they cut their way out of the tent and like left in a hurry because all their stuff and all their clothes are still in there. Because of this, because the tent isn't found completely like still set up and erect. It is been, it's been snowed on, and it's they have to kind of like unbury it from the snow. There has been a lot of snowfall in the area over the past couple of weeks and days while they were out there, which is why it made them so hard to find. And so that's kind of where there's a theory that there was an avalanche, and they, cut their way out after being somewhat buried in the snow. But we'll get into why later, but there's reasons why a lot of people don't believe there was an avalanche. The snow, I'm going to use some paint pens, the snow on the tent is just from snowfall from the sky, along with the rest of the blizzard. You dig? I'm going to give him gold eyes. I just decided that. But I thought I would go ahead and do it. I'm going to definitely color the inside something, his pupil, but I don't know what I'm going to make his pupils yet. I just want to get the eyeballs colored in, and that way they can dry. So, the tent is really badly damaged and everything, and all their stuff is still inside, and it's sliced from the inside. They left in a hurry without even their clothes and shoes, most of them. Some of them seem to have had clothes and shoes, and we'll get into that in a little bit. There are 9 sets of footprints found outside, and some are wearing socks, 1 shoe, or barefoot, and they're leading down the edge of a nearby wood on the opposite side of the pass, like almost a mile to the northeast. After 1,600 feet, the tracks are covered with snow, so they kind of lose the tracking system there. Let's see, what color do I want to make his wings? What should I do here? You know what, let's go back, and while I think about what color I'm going to do his wings, we're going to give him some texture while I talk here. So they come, I've seen the tree that I showed in the diagram. It's been called a cedar, a Siberian pine, and all of that. I don't actually know what the species of tree is, but, you know, the searchers come to that tree, and like I said, it had the broken branches, and that's when they find the first two bodies of both of the men Yuri. They're both named Yuri, so I'm sorry if that is confusing. Nothing I can do about that. I'm going to say their names the best I can without butchering them. I'm so sorry. So the first two bodies were shoeless and dressed only in underwear, and the bodies in the creek, we'll get into them in a minute, but they're not found until May 4th. So keep in mind, the first set of bodies are found February 26th, and it is not until May 4th when the second set of bodies are found, because they have to wait for spring and snow melt and things like that. And they're still found under 13 feet of snow. So I don't really know how they found them, even though they were still very much buried in the snow. I don't know if they were able to finally see some footprints and trace them to that area or what. It doesn't say. It just says that they're found under 13 feet of snow in the creek. And each of them has, you know, after their bodies are collected and autopsies are performed, they all have some very weird injuries. And I've got a list here we're going to go through, and I'm going to be horrible at their names again, and I'm so sorry. But I'll tell you about their strange injuries, because they don't really match up with what people would think would happen during an avalanche or the circumstances that have been explained. It doesn't work, because they're just so weird. Okay. So, Yuri Doroshenko, we'll talk about him first, and he was found by the tree. He has particles of moss and pine needles found in his hair, and his hair is burned on the right side of his head. So, like, I don't know if he got too close to the fire. It would make sense to find particles of moss and stuff in his hair if he was climbing the tree. So that's kind of easily explainable. But no explanation as to why his hair would and the side of his face would be burned. His ears, nose, and lips are covered in blood. He has a swollen upper lip with a dark red hemorrhage, which a lot of that just means like a big bruise, you know. The right cheek soft tissue is covered with a gray foam, and he's got gray liquid coming from his mouth, and his apparent cause of death is a pulmonary edema. And I couldn't find anything that said, like, what the gray foam was. I don't know if it's just normal, like, death juices, or if it was something unusual. I couldn't find any elaboration on that. I might go back in with a red marker and kind of give him some random red dots, too, just to give it a little bit of extra. His ears are a bluish, like, red color in his right earlobe, and like, kind of below the earlobe are dense patches of brown-red color. So I guess some different kinds of either burning or bruising. There's swelling and small abrasions in the rear of the right hand soft tissue, and a bruise with bleeding into the underlying soft tissue on the back of the right hand. The soft tissue of both hands and fingertips is dark purple, which makes sense for frostbite, and there's going to be a lot of that. And all fingers and toes are frostbitten, and it does say that if he had survived that, all of those would have had to have been amputated, which is the case for a few of these folks, sadly. I've never had it, but I know frostbite is intensely painful. Let's maybe do a yellow outline of the wings, and then we'll go from there on what we're going to do next. So the next one is Yuri Yudin. And the inner surface of the right shoulder has 2 abrasions, small, they're like 2 by 1.5 centimeters, with no bleeding in the tissue. 2 cuts on the skin. The right armpit is bruised, inner surface of the left shoulder bruised, and had abrasions. And I know that sounds weird, but if you think about it in the context of climbing a tree and having to put your arms around the tree trunk and pull yourself up, those injuries make a lot more sense. I mean, a lot of these injuries I'm describing are just medical terms for dude climbed a tree and got scuffed up. The inner surface of the left forearm and surface wound with dried blood. So he's like scraping himself along the way as he's climbing this tree. He's got bruised shins, which makes sense for pulling himself up, and more injuries consistent with climbing a tree without clothing and in a hurry. So, and I think his, or at least they think his cause of death was hypothermia. So Zenaida Kolomogrova, she's found between the tent and the tree, if you remember, and she has dark red abrasions on the right frontal eminence, and then a pale gray area above the right eyebrow. Abrasions on her upper eyelids, abrasions on the bridge and tip of her nose, numerous abrasions on the left cheekbone, bruised skin on the right side of the face, abrasions on hands, and a jagged wound on the back of the right hand, frostbite on her fingers, long bruise across the lumbar region of her, like right side and torso. The lumbar region is like, you know, around your lower back. And the bruise across her like torso and the back of her torso looked like it was left behind by a baton, which, I mean, I don't think it was, but that's just an observation the medical examiner made. So to me, those injuries, like across her eyes and face and everything, that to me sounds like running blindly through brush and having it scratch your face and everything like that. And I believe her cause of death was also thought to be hypothermia. Which, none of that sounds that weird at the moment. You know, all of that sounds completely plausible, doesn't it? It's gonna get weirder, though. I promise. Like, it's already kind of weird because why did they go running out of their tent undressed and everything? Because if there was an avalanche, yes, they would be in a hurry to get away from the area while they thought it was going on. But then once it chilled out, they would want to get back to their tent and get their stuff, get their clothes, and get dressed. And the ones that made it out with a little bit of clothing would probably be expected to help out and go and get these. But something else happened and they weren't able to do that. Then we have Igor Dyatlov. I think I called him Yuri earlier, and I'm sorry. I didn't mean to. His name is Igor Dyatlov, and he's actually who Dyatlov Pass was named after. This is not some crazy coincidence that he just happened to be there and it was named after him. No, it's named after him because he was there. And this happened. And he was the head of the expedition. He was the one that put the whole thing together and kind of the leader of the group. So it got named after him. What do you guys think of orange inside of these wings? I'm going to let that paint dry for a second. Alright. So he had minor abrasions on his forehead, minor abrasions on his eyelids, abrasions on his cheeks, dried blood on his lips, bruised knees. Excuse me. I've tried not to burp into the mic. A red brownish abrasions on his ankles, and abrasion on his right tibia, and scratches on his palms and arms, and bruised hands with lots of abrasions, and cause of death presumed hypothermia. Next is Rustam Slobodin, also between the tent and the tree, and he has a hemorrhage in his temporal muscles. He has abrasions on his forehead, bruised and abrasions on his eyelids, bloody nose, swelling and abrasions on both sides of the face, bruised hands. And, okay, so whenever, on the next two guys, it talks about how they have abrasions on their hands that are, what you would see in, like, hand-to-hand combat. So it doesn't, I couldn't find anything that delved into a theory that these guys had maybe gotten into a fight with each other or someone else, but they make the point of saying in the medical exam that these are consistent with hand-to-hand combat, which is interesting. But also, if you think about it in the context of, like, panic and hypothermia and possibly, like, hysteria and, you know, a stressful situation, maybe they did get into a fight. Maybe they were fighting over clothing. Maybe they were fighting over, like, a plan. Maybe one was, like, blaming the other for what had happened. I don't know, but it just says consistent with hand-to-hand combat. He's got bruised arms, swollen lips, bruised tibia, and the scratch on the right forearm, and a skull fracture in the frontal bone. So, he was put through the ringer pretty much. He does sound like he went through some things, for sure. Now, whether one of his hiking partners beat him up or something else, or it was injuries sustained another way, we don't know. But it is interesting and strange. Ludmila Dubina, soft tissue missing around her eyes. Okay, so before I get into her, so the next few people I'm going to be talking about, they were the ones found in the stream, and they are the ones that have a much weirder circumstance of death around how they died and what happened and everything. Ugh. I know my eyesight is terrible, but I want to get all the whites in if I can. Alright, let's go back to Ludmila. So we know she was in the stream. She's going to have soft tissue missing around her eyes, eyebrows, nose, bridge, and the left cheekbone, like so much so on the cheekbone that the flesh is gone and the bone is exposed. So, and that actually, it sounds horrifying and graphic, but it also sounds like animals. The interesting thing there, though, is, like, if they were buried under all that snow, how did animals get to them? Because they're also found in the stream. Let me get the diagram back out here so we can see this. So, there's 4 bodies found here in the stream. And Ludmila is found facing this way underneath the 3 others. So, she's right here. And she's found a 5th out of the rest of the 9. They find her 5. or fifth, yeah. Well, anyway. Her eye sockets are empty. There's tissue damage around the left temporal bone. The nose cartilage is broken and flattened. Soft tissue of the upper lip is missing. Teeth and upper jaw are exposed. And her tongue is missing. Ribs 2, 3, 4, and 5 are broken on the right side, and 2 fracture lines visible. There's a massive hemorrhage under her right arterium, which is kind of by the heart, and then a bruised middle left thigh. So they do compare in the medical examiner this to like a force very consistent with like a getting hit by a car or something. It's really brutal. Then there's Semyon Zolotaryov. Oh, I'm so sorry. So his eyeballs are missing. He's missing soft tissue on the left eyebrow with the bone exposed. He has an open wound on the right side of the skull with a more exposed bone. He's got, his chest is like broken, like the ribs and the bones in his chest are broken. And also his ribs 2, 3, 4, 5, and 6 on the right side are also broken. And this is another one where they are saying it's consistent more with the injuries, like of a great force, like a car getting hit by a car. So that's very strange. Like they don't, what they're saying is they don't think another human could have caused this, and it's not consistent with like a short fall either, like if he had been in the tree and fallen out of the tree, which there's no evidence that he was in the tree. So that's him. There's Alexander Kolevatov. The soft tissue around his eyes and eyebrows are missing with bone exposed. The bridge of his nose is straight, but the cartilage is soft with unusual mobility. At the base of the nose is flat and nostrils compressed. So it sounds like the nose is intact, but right up where it meets the face, where it should be kind of held firm, it's very movable. So it's almost like his nose, except for the skin holding it on, the nose was broken away from his face almost, but it was still attached. Sounds horrific. There's an open wound behind his ear. It says deformed neck, so I'm imagining like he had a break in the neck. Let me use Henry here. A break in the neck to where it protruded or something like that. I'm not sure, but it just says deformed neck. Bleeding in the underlying tissue of the left knee. Softened and whitened skin consistent with putrefaction in wet environment. The overall skin had a green-gray color with a tinge of purple, which sounds like decomp and lividity. And then the last one was Nikolai Brignole, and he has multiple fractures to the temporal bone with extensions to the frontal, and temporal is frontal, and all that's in the skull. And the sphenoid bones, I'm sorry, I was trying to read too fast. And he has a bruised upper lip and a hemorrhage on the lower forearm. The causes of death are hypothermia and trauma, and then the chest injuries. And then for the ones found in the stream, another very strange and very interesting, compelling thing is that the bodies had been exposed to radiation at some point. They were radioactive when they found them. And, you know, when the medical examiner did their autopsies, you know, they had to take precautions for radiation poisoning. So that is kind of one of the major things that throws people about this case. And I gotta admit, it throws me too. Like, I don't know what that means. That's crazy. So, very weird. Weird stuff. I don't know if I'm messing these up and making them look worse, but I don't like how that turned out. So I'm trying to change it up a little bit. So, you know, that's everybody and their injuries, and it's very strange, the circumstances they're found in. and all of that. I'm sorry, there's like something happening outside my house and I don't know what's going on. Okay, well, if you can tell that little jump in editing that is bound to happen, I had to see what was going on outside, and it was a UPS truck. It was very loud, very banging around and stuff like that, but it happens. Alright, so that's everybody that was, you know, on the trip, and their bodies are found. Another group of hikers on the other side of the mountain reported seeing orange or yellow orbs floating around the area. It doesn't seem like they knew at the time that there were any other hikers over there, but that's been something. So that's kind of, you know, had people say, oh, it was aliens, and I don't know, maybe it was. But I guess that's going to kind of bring us into the theories now. And there's some great ones. I like the aliens theory. I like it a lot, but that's just because I like aliens. Or the idea of them anyway. I'm fine if they want to take over. We haven't really done a great job, so let them have at it. Unless they've been in charge all along and then they've done a shitty job. So the official conclusion was that they died of a compelling natural force, like an avalanche or something. And the inquest ended in May of 1959 due to no guilty party. Like, after they didn't, you know, at first they kind of thought maybe it was the murder, but it wasn't. And so it was just kind of seen as like a natural disaster, because the theory, the one the government went with anyway, was an avalanche had ultimately overtaken the group and caused their demise. And maybe it did. Maybe it did. But for me, that leaves a lot of things unanswered. So I don't know. But it's completely possible, I guess. In April of 2018, that's when I was talking about earlier, Zolotaryov's remains are exhumed and contradictory results found. His injuries resembled that of being knocked down by a car, and then DNA results of the body was not genetically related to Zolotrov's family, which, I mean, I don't know what that even means. Basically, like, they exhumed his body, and when they did his DNA test, they discovered he wasn't actually related to his family, so I don't know if he was adopted or what. And maybe he was, and everybody in his family at the time knew it, but as time has passed, that part wasn't mentioned to later family members that they would have tested today, and so maybe they didn't know he was adopted. Maybe it was the wrong grave. I don't know. Maybe it wasn't actually him that was buried there. I don't know. But they did say that his injuries were more consistent with that of a really bad, like, car accident, because of the amount of pressure to his chest cavity and the fractures and things that he suffered from. Whoop, 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 whoop. In February of 2019, the Russian authorities reopened the investigation, but they were only ever investigating it as a weather event, and like they just wanted to see what happened. Okay. And so they basically concluded that it was an avalanche, which I just don't like that explanation, even though it may have very well been. So another one of the theories is that it was the Mansi, which were tribal people that lived up in the area at the time, but, you know, that doesn't fly because they're peaceful and not known to, you know, go after hikers or anything. They just want to live their lives, and also they helped in the search for the hikers. So I think that they're just innocent and only people even really considered them at the time because they lived in the area. Another super fun theory is the Yeti, which sounds way more fun than an avalanche, but also, I don't know if he's radioactive. Maybe he is, maybe he isn't. Food for thought. I hate these wings. I really hate the way this came out. Oh, I'm not happy with it at all. Gonna try to give it a little bit of oomph here. You guys, if you watch this and bother commenting, like, let me know how much this sucks. Because I hate it. I'm not a fan of it. And I feel bad that I didn't do Flump any justice. Sorry, dude. Like, your body's okay, but your wings came out kind of poopy. Not super happy with it. Where's my paint pens? There we go. So another theory is that it was some sort of secret weapon by the Russian government. Like they were testing something out there and the hikers got caught up in it and the military covered it up, which doesn't sound too far-fetched as a person that doesn't trust governments at all or even institutions. That sounds totally plausible to me, that they had some sort of weapon or were doing some kind of testing up there and didn't want to take liability for what happened. Another vague theory is an unexplained natural phenomenon, which, okay. And then mass hysteria, which I'm not sure where that comes in. Mass hysteria implies that, like, nothing happened. They were just crazy. But, I mean, I think what they mean by that is, like, they were overtaken by mass hysteria, fled the tent, and, you know, then the following events occurred, which maybe. But what would have caused it? Who knows? Maybe they were telling crazy ghost stories and psyched each other out. I don't know. I just think that that's kind of ridiculous. But, you know, whatever. And so that's kind of it. There are plenty of like shows and documentaries on it that do a deeper dive into it and everything. I was just kind of telling you guys about it while I did a little artwork and everything. But it's a weird case, and even though they've supposedly solved it, I'm not satisfied with the explanation of an avalanche or anything like that. I do think that the government knows more than what they're saying, and I do think that we'll never actually know the truth, because that's what governments do. They lie, they cover up, they deflect, and then they blame other people. So at least they're doing that part of their job. Alright, guys, so this is Flump. Hopefully you liked what you heard here today. If you do, give me a subscribe. If you hated it, tell me how much you hated it in the comments and why. I'm trying to get better as I go and doing the best I can. And like I said earlier, check out my Leo the Lurker channel if you want to hear Reddit stories read and reacted to. I've been having a lot of fun doing that, and every episode I have a new little background, and I've been on my paydays buying stuff to make you know, the background different and a little more interesting each time. So I'm going to keep adding to that and all that kind of fun stuff. But thanks for joining me today, and I'll see you probably in about a week with a new episode. All right. Bye, everybody.